Today we're looking at Krishna's Christmas Eve. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, Krishna's Christmas Eve is a part of their RS series of inks, and it's a blue ink. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into a different pen for a day. I then put this ink into a Pilot Metropolitan with a medium nib to take my notes for this video. Before we get to the writing samples, let's look at the sciencey bits. And up first is the chromatography. And I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water. And it moves straight up the page, but leaving a very light blue behind all the way up. Yeah, blue behind, but I'm not gonna joke on that this time. No, it leaves a very light blue as it moves up, and it becomes a dark blue with an almost blackish line at the top. The one on the right I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water, and we see a very dark blue line across the bottom, and then it moves with a light blue into the dark blue into the same very black line or very dark blue line at the top, making me feel that it's got a little bit of some kind of hold on. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean out of your pens. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. The interesting thing is, while I don't get to see a lot of sheen in a lot of areas, there's some neat sheen that shows up on this swab. On the highlighter, it doesn't do well. I would not highlight this ink if I didn't have to. It doesn't like it. Water completely reactivates, completely pulling it off the page. That yellow is transfer from a paper towel, but it shouldn't take anything more than water to clean this out of your pen. For as much as that was coming through, I see little white spots. Pen flesh does the same thing as water, completely pulling it up off the page, leaving light blue behind and a couple almost white spots. Bleach, as can be expected, obliterates it. Don't use bleach to clean this ink from a pen. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Krishna's Christmas Eve has a viscosity of 1.52, which makes it super wet. It is in that red zone, right between the 1.3 and the 1.7. This is a very, very wet ink. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples of the extra fine and medium nib done on Clairefontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. For the inks I've tested, I've found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Krishna's Christmas Eve has an average dry time of 17 seconds, which doesn't just make it normal, it makes it average. Considering it's so wet, to wind up dry time in the center is pretty impressive to me. Now, let's take a look at the writing samples. I got this ink in bottle form back when I ordered 30 plus bottles before it really made it to the States. And this ink reminded me, as I was setting up to do this particular filming, about the problem that I did have with some of these bottles. So you might see where, see, it's a little chewed up on the cap, and that's from me having to get into it, because with it being such a small bottle and such a small cap, if it gets stuck, you wind up having to go for one of those gripper aids in order to get this thing open. It gets crazy tight. So be super careful with these bottles, because I could definitely see you making one heck of a mess getting into it. To keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at Clairefontaine. We get no bleeding and no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, but we're getting shading with the 1.1. Very nice shading. The extra fine gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and again, some very nice shading throughout all of the writing, and 10 seconds to dry. Now the medium gets a little darker than it was with the extra fine. We have no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and we don't have the shading with it. With it being a wetter nib, we lose that shading, 17 seconds to dry. And when we look at the scrubby, we see that the extra fine is expected to give us some shade, and the medium is not, which is exactly what we got. I believe when you look at the smear test that you would be able to recover this. Tomoe River. We have no bleeding, except in the scrubby where I'm an aggressive idiot. We have show-through. We have ghosting. The 1.1 gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and no shade. We lose the shade here. The extra fine gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. Sheen. We get sheen. So the sheen that I see in the chemical tests comes through in some of the writing. If hopefully I can get it to... Never going to beat myself up trying to get stuff on camera like that. It does get some sheen in the writing. It's this thing, it just catches your attention just a little bit. It's not a ton of it. Not a ton of sheen with it. Let's see if we get it into the scrubby. Now, there you're seeing some of it in the scrubby. So you do get some of the sheen in the writing. No shading. No shading on this paper. 16 seconds to dry. Medium gives us no feather, no spread. No halo. We do still see some of that sheen. And no shading. 27 seconds to dry. The scrubby shows us in both the extra fine and the medium that we're not going to expect to see much shading, but that we might expect to see some of the sheen. And it even shows us that we would expect more sheen with the medium than with the extra fine. Smear test says we're not going to recover if you smear while you're writing. Rhodia paper gives us no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. I don't know why it didn't come through there. The extra fine gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. 12 seconds. And it's weird because it's the same paper that I used to do the chemical tests. 12 seconds to dry. Now on the medium gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. 18 seconds to dry. When we look at the scrubby, we expect not to be able to get any color variation on this paper with these nibs because we're not seeing it here, but the smear test says we can recover this. Oh, so actually, this was one I didn't plan on reviewing in there. I just wanted to show it because it's kind of interesting that we see the beginnings of feathering occurring on the Rhodia focus. I pulled it out as I didn't really plan on looking at this. The K in quick, we see a little bit of feathering begin. The D in dog, focus. The D in dog gives us a little bit of feathering on the underside. We do see in the medium the beginnings of some feathering. That wasn't a paper that I was really going to look at fully here. But it was just interesting that some of the feathering did show up on that Rhodia, but not this Rhodia. So I went and I put it onto the hazel paper, and I try to put all of the Krishna inks onto the notebook that I got with them. We get no bleeding. We get no ghosting. The 1.1, we have no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. We do get minor shading. The extra fine, we have no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. Still some of the shading. Little bit of shading, not a ton, but some. 4 seconds to dry. Incredibly manageable dry times on this paper. The medium gives us no feather, no spread. We do get, we get no halo, but we do get some sheen. What in the world? Alrighty. We do get some sheen with the medium on this paper, which is really interesting because it's such an absorbent paper. Even though it's incredibly well behaved, it's probably one of the best performing papers for being so absorbent that I've come across. No color variation whatsoever. 7 seconds to dry. The scrubby and the extra fine shows us we're going to get a little color variation, especially if you look from the far left to the far right. It's not showing at that point on the camera. There we go. We get some color variation far left to far right on the extra fine, but absolutely not on the medium. And the smear test, let's go. The smear test shows we could recover this if we smeared this. So then I tested Vista, little Vista pocket notebooks. The Modern Traveler. That's what they put. Hashtag the Modern Traveler. Just don't do it with a medium nib. We're getting bleeding, but not all the way through. It's just starting to bleed. We definitely have ghosting with both the extra fine and the medium. Again, it's just weird. The extra fine, not nearly as much. That's not so bad. I could live with this in a pocket notebook. I would not use the back side of the page with the medium. The 1.1 has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. The extra fine is a noticeably lighter color with no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade, 4 seconds to dry. And the medium gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. It looks like it has what would be the beginning of some sheen, but I'm not seeing it actually come through, and I'm not seeing it in a scrubby. So I'm saying no sheen, but it's not impossible. The scrubby shows us on the extra fine. We should expect a little color variation, but we don't see it in the writing. The medium shows us no color variation in a scrubby, and we didn't get any of it in the writing. Now the smear test shows us the extra fine we would be able to recover, but the medium I don't believe you would be able to recover. It was obviously much wetter than the extra fine that day, and that's probably why we lost it. A little drier medium, and you probably would be able to recover that. And that's what I have for the writing sample. Instead of finding inks that look like Krishna's Christmas Eve, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I've chosen Noodler's Dragon's Napalm, and it was the sheen that I got from this ink that made me think about the Dragon's Napalm. Before I give my opinion on this ink, I would ask if you've enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, and if it's your first time here, I would invite you to subscribe. So what do I think of Krishna's Christmas? First off, beware the bottle. But second, this ink does very well when it comes to how it writes. It has very good characteristics, but the sheen doesn't come through as you would really hope for it in the writing samples. It's on the smear, but not as much on the writing samples. But this ink is very intense and vibrant. Thanks for watching.